As the daughter of two prime ministers, Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga surprised no one with her rise to the presidency. In a region accustomed to dynastic politics, she was destined to lead, and it was generally assumed her story would follow a familiar script. But her life and the choices she made were anything but predictable. She challenged norms, broke ranks with established thinking, and forged a path entirely her own.
Well, my sister and I were born 2 years apart, so that's not a big gap. So we grew up together as friends. But of course, we used to fight a great deal because our personalities are very, very different. She was very naughty and disobedient at home as well as in school, and I was the opposite.
Of course, I played with children of my age, my family and other friends. But often I would get bored with child's play, and then I would run into the house and try to see what the adults were doing. And I often found myself eavesdropping into the big people's conversations, hiding behind doors and eavesdropping.
I knew Chandrika from a very early age because we both lived down the same road, and she went to school at St. Bridget's with my sisters. Then her mother was very strict with her. We used to all go for 9:30 shows, a group of us. Because she was gated and not allowed to come, she used to scale over the wall and then join us for the 9:30 film.
Rather than following the typical route of elite Ceylonese students pursuing further education in Britain, she chose to study in France.
When I studied French history for my A-levels, and we studied British history, Sri Lankan history and all that, that I got very interested by the French Revolution. And I thought, who are these people who do this, who have done this exceptionally interesting, exciting thing? Then I read a lot and got interested in the French culture, the arts, and all that. I found the British were too staid and stolid, very nice, responsible, democratic people. But I wanted more excitement in my life. So I decided to go to Paris for my studies, and I didn't for a moment regret it.
She began to change because now she was entirely on her own. There was no Amma, no I Amma fussing around her. Therefore, she decided that she has to do things on her own and be independent. From far away, I could see even the letters she used to write. Her style was changing. She was taking life seriously. And then she took part in the student protest. And she was in the front lines of the student protest. I would have been terrified to do a thing like that. But she wasn't.
Chandrika led efforts to establish cooperative farms, better known as Janawasa, enabling rural youth to collectively own and manage land to achieve maximum productivity. It was a complex and demanding mission, requiring her to navigate bureaucratic obstacles and confront entrenched interests.
මට මතකයි ගාල්ල දිස්ත්‍රික්කේ අක්කර 5000ක විතර දිවිතුරු කියලා වත්තක් තිබුණා. ඒකේ මේ කලමනාකාරීත්වයට එතන හිටපු දේශපාලඥයාගේ සහෝදරයෙකුගේ පුතෙක් බලහත්කාරයෙන් යොමු කරා. එයා අයින් උනේම නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ මෙහෙන් නිලධාරි පිරිසක් ගියා. ඊයන්ට මේ ඒ කියන දේ කිසිවක් එයා පිළිගත්තේ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ දවසක් මට කිව්වා මැඩම් දෙකට විතර දවල් යම් අයත් එක්ක ගාල්ලේ කියලා. යනකොට ඒ රෑ 7 විතර වුණා. ඒ කාලේ ඒ ලයිට් එහෙම තිබුණෙත් නැහැ ඒ ගම. ටී ෆැක්ටරියේ ලයිට් වලින් තමයි වැඩ කරේ. හිටපු ගමන් අපි යනකොට ලයිට් ඔෆ් වුණා. මැඩම් කතා කරන්න යනකොට ඒ සමාජිකයන්ට හූ කියන්න පටන් ගත්තා. ඒක පිටිපස්සේ හිටපු කට්ටියක් තමයි මේක මෙහෙව්වේ. ඊට පස්සේ මැඩම් කරපු වැඩේ මේ ජීප් එකේ ලයිට් එක දාලා බොනට් එක උඩට නැගලා ලොකු කතාවක් කරා. ඊට පස්සේ අර සංවිධානය කරපු කට්ටිය පසු බැලලා ගියා. පස්සේ ආරංචි වුණා පෙට්‍රල් බෝම්බ එහෙම ලෑස්ති කරගෙන හිටියා කියලා. ඉතින් ඒ වගේ මේ නිර්භීත බොහොම ප්‍රතාපවත් චරිතයක්.
මේ ජනාවාසයේ සමාජයත් එක්ක වැඩ කරලා බිම ඉඳගෙන මයි ඔක්ක තම්බගෙන කාලා තමයි මේ කටයුතු කරේ. මේක සැප ජීවිතයක් ගෙවුවේ නෑ. මෙයා. ඔරලෝසු වෙලාවක් තිබුණේ නෑ. රෑ වෙනවද දවල් වෙනවද කියන්නේ. අවුව වැස්සද පෙන්නද කියන එක බැලුවේ නෑ. 70 ඡන්දෙන් පස්සේ ජනාවාස කොමිසම් සභාව ජනාවාස සමාජිකයන්ගේ මලගෙදරට මෙච්චර කැප වෙලා වැඩ කරපු රටේ අනාගතේ හොඳ ප්‍රශ්නයක් විසඳන්න තියෙන එක තරුණ තරුණයන් කුෂිකර්මාන්තයට යොදවන එක භූමියේ අයිතිය ඒගොල්ලන්ට පවරා දෙන එක නැති කිරීම ගැන ටික කාලයක් යනකල් හිතේ හරි වේදනාවක් තිබ්බ කොච්චර හරි කියුවේ කියනවා.
Her marriage to the popular actor Vijay Kumaratunga drew Chandrika into Sri Lanka's artistic and cultural community, broadening her experiences beyond the social and political spheres she had long inhabited. She soon became fondly known by the initials CBK, a moniker that has since remained in wide use. In 1984, Chandrika left the Sri Lanka Freedom Party to join Vijaya's newly formed Sri Lanka Mahajana Pakshaya, which was driven by the intention to advance peace-building efforts to address the country's escalating ethnic crisis.
Even before I got up there, because I believed sometimes in what the majority did not believe in, but I had the courage to fight for it. So it was a lonely fight. I remember when Vijay and I decided to support the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, 2/3 of our party's Central Committee left. We argued for 2 days till 2-3 in the morning from about 6 o'clock in the evening in our house. And very senior, respected people like T.B. Langaratna, V.W. Kularatna, and so many others resigned from the party, saying, we can't agree with you, we can't support the 13th Amendment. So it was lonely up there. And, when you believe in something strongly and it's not some mad thing, you have arrived at that belief by looking at the facts logically, there will be some people who will take your stand, who will agree with you. So we always had supporters who were of our view. So we were never alone. If we wanted to make a radical change and take the country forward, obviously we had to resolve this seething problem. And the way to do it was to give the Tamil and Muslim and other minority communities their rights. And it was not easy. My husband got killed because of those beliefs.
After Vijaya Kumaratunga's assassination in 1988, Chandrika and her children, Yashodhara and Vimukti, were forced into exile due to security threats. But she remained undeterred.
මැතිවරණයක් කියනකොට ඔක්කොම මැතිවරණ කරන අයට කියන්නේ ඡන්ද ඉල්ලන අයට පරිත්‍යාගශීලීන්ගෙන් පරිත්‍යාග ලැබෙනවා. ඉතින් එතුමියට පරිත්‍යාග ගෙනාවහම සමහර පරිත්‍යාග එතුමිය බාරගත්තේ නැහැ. එතුමිය කියලා තියෙනවා ඒ වගේ දේවල් බාරගත්තාම අපට ඒ අය කියන විදිහට වැඩ කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා කියලා. ඒ හින්දා ඒ වයින් හුඟක් ඈත් වෙන්න තමයි බැලුවේ.
When she won the presidency in 1994 with a sweeping mandate, it marked not just a political victory, but a moment of transformation for Sri Lanka.
94 බලයට පත් වෙලා පළවෙනි රාජ්‍ය සේවකයන් කැඳවලා කරපු සාකච්ඡාව ඉහළම පෙළේ රාජ්‍ය සේවකයන් කැඳවලා ඒ වෙලාවේ මට පැවරුණා මේ රැසීම අමතලා හඳුන්වා දීම කරන්න. ඉතින් මම අර පුරුදු විදිහටම ඉස්සර අපි භාවිතා කර විදිහටම අතිගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමිය කියලා කීපවරක් කියමින් සභාව ඇමතීමක් කළා. ඒ කරන අතරතුරේ මට පොඩි චිට් එකක් ජනාධිපතිතුමියගෙන් ලැබුණා. මොකද එතනමයි මම ඉඳගෙන හිටියේ. ඒක ඉතින් මම කතාව අතරදී ගැහැරලා බලනකොට ඒකේ තියෙනවා අතිගරු කෑල්ල කපා හරින්න කියලා. වර්ෂ 3ක් සඳහා රාජ්‍ය සේවයේ හැම අමාත්‍යාංශයකටම මුළු රාජ්‍ය සේවයේටම අයලා සංවර්ධන සැලැස්මක් සකස් කිරීමත් ඒ ඉලක්ක සහගත සංවර්ධනයක් කරා යෑම මෙහෙයවීම තමයි මම විශේෂයෙන්ම දකින එක. මොකද ගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමිය හැම වෙලාවෙම මේ සැලසුම් සේවය සහ සැලසුම් කිරීම පිළිබඳ තද විශ්වාසයෙන් කටයුතු කළා.
It was groundbreaking, really, in Sri Lankan politics. She led in a very different way. And I wonder if maybe that also meant that she was respected for that in a different way. Maybe at the beginning, particularly the civil servants that she would have had to work with would have found her approach incredibly difficult and unconventional because she was so liberal and open-minded, and her approach was sort of more lateral thinking. But I think once they sussed her out and once they sussed out how she was working, I think maybe that was also an interesting approach for them.
I began as a friend, somebody who was, and that, more an activist who became a friend, you might say. And that emerged from my appreciation, in fact, admiration of the position she took on the ethnic issue, where she was completely supportive of Tamil rights, Tamil autonomy, even federalism, and opposed to the Tigers' ultranationalism, and opposed to Sinhala ultranationalism. Eventually, she asked me to work for her as a senior advisor on the peace process and peace negotiations. One of the things that I think attracted people like me on the left who were concerned and supportive of a multi-ethnic Sri Lanka was Chandrika's willingness to go against not just the prevailing ideology, nationalist ideology. She took a position diametrically opposed to that of her father. Even though I think she hero worshipped him, loved him, admired him, and looked up to him, she was willing to make that break with her family, not just her father, her mother also, who implemented many of the aspects around Sinhala only. So she took this very courageous personal stand because I think it's easy to go against the country, but it's much harder to go against your mother and father, which she did. And that it takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts. It's not easy.
She always struck me as a political leader who never used racism or never opted for racial mechanisms in order for her political advancement. And if ever she had the opportunity to address the people of Sri Lanka, and there were numerous instances, especially as head of state, irrespective of the audience, be they Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Burgher, she was always very sensitive to the audience, very sensitive to the culture and the tradition of the people to whom she was speaking. Even if you take into consideration her first cabinet, the 1994 cabinet, of which my late father was a member as well, it was probably one of the most diverse cabinets Sri Lanka ever had. So I think that is the kind of inclusivity that she represented.
The Sudunelum movement was launched to rebuild trust between communities, without which peace would remain elusive. Led by Minister Mangala Samaravira, the movement aimed to raise public awareness of pluralism and reconciliation through media campaigns and by facilitating conversations between ethnic and religious groups. CBK's peace initiatives were unprecedented in their ambition. Her government proposed a new constitutional framework, shaped through broad consultations, to address the root causes of ethnic conflict by offering greater devolution of power while preserving national unity. Though ultimately defeated in Parliament, the effort reflected her conviction that political reform, not military action alone, was essential to end the fighting. CBK's relationship with the media was often tense, at times memorably so. Less frequently recalled is an intriguing decision that seemed counterintuitive during a time of armed conflict.
Private television broadcasters were able to actually produce news. This had been restricted until 1995. It was dominated by the state media, the Sri Lanka Rupawani Corporation, and the independent television news. In fact, the growth of the private television industry, though it started in 1992 and 1993, it only actually properly took off in the years that followed.
When it comes to the economy, I cannot think of a single political leader that transitioned from a leftist to a centrist economic position in under a year. And that was because she had one of the best groups of technocrats that was advising her. And as a consequence, I see her as probably the only leader in the last 25 years that actually implemented significant reform, the benefits of which are seen to this date. So during the period from 1995 to 2001, which were the 6 full years that she governed before she had to relinquish the prime ministership to Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, the economy grew at 5.1%, the highest average economic growth during the conflict period. That was the longest period that Sri Lanka did not go under an IMF program, well over 6 years. And if I were to give some examples of where pioneering reforms took place, she encouraged for the first time the implementation of public-private partnerships. So during the 6 years between 1995 and 2001, more than $800 million of PPP transactions were financially closed, which means implemented in the port sector, telecommunications sector, power sector, both in thermal and renewable. That resulted in the growth of the IT sector. CBK's economic leadership was transformative because she believed in building institutions, building teams, and hiring professionals from the private sector where there were skill gaps in government.
The main thing was that she came at a time when our standing, particularly internationally, was very low, and a lot of repair work had to be done. I think she brought into her cabinet some of the brightest people, and also I think her work style was one which encouraged debate and discussion. And even as middle-level officers, we used to be very openly be able to give our views and have a good debate about it. From my vantage point in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, working under the leadership of Foreign Minister Kadiragama, was the ability to have crafted a more balanced foreign policy. Now, as a result, on the foreign policy area, we had a better story to tell. And that helped the central task, at least I faced at that time, which was in trying to restore our image to a country which was, yes, had problems, but was trying to reconcile and solve them. Great attention was paid to issues like migrant workers, consular assistance, even arts and culture and sports. And I think all this helped and was contributed to trying to bring foreign policy into a more thinking, analyzing, and then operationalizing mode.
Her reforms were very comprehensive, widespread, and innovative because it had a very interesting impact on curricular changes and changes into the examination system. And in addition to that, she reintroduced the midday nutritious meal program, introduced English medium education, which was like a landmark initiative. Social infrastructure was a key passion of hers. She consulted many experts. So she took their ideas on board, but she too had her own take on most of those things, which added a lot of flavor to whatever proposals that were written out and eventually implemented.
මැඩම් අපිට උදව් කෙරුවා අනුබල දුන්නා. කියන්නේ කිසි විදියකට බලපෑම් අපිට කෙරුවේ නැහැ. ඒ වගේම අපිට ස්වාධීනව අපේ කාර්ය කරන්න ඉඩ දුන්නා. වෙන කාටවත් ඇඟිලි ගසන්න දුන්නෙත් නැහැ. මම හිතන්නේ අද වෙනකොට ළමා ශ්‍රමිකයන් කියන නාමයක්වත් හොයාගන්න නැහැ අද. ගුරුවරුන්ගේ හිටියට කීම් එහෙම නැත්නම් කායික දණ්ඩනයට විරුද්ධව කරපු ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් තිබුණා. දෙමව්පියන්ට පණිවිඩයක් ගියා මේ ළමයින්ට ගහන එක හොඳ නැහැ කියන එක. ඊට වඩා විකල්ප මාර්ග තියෙනවා කියන එක ජනාධිපතිතුමිය හිටියේ නැත්නම් මම හිතන්නේ ওই දේවල් කරන්න අපිට අවස්ථාවක් ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ.
Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga experienced profound personal loss, steered the country through a time of brutal conflict, and survived an assassination attempt. Where did her resilience come from?
Maybe genes. And also perhaps the experience of seeing my mother, who was a very brave woman. Also, it's in similar situation. She had lost her husband. She was alone. She also charted uncommon paths. So, and that I was very affected by, seeing her bravery, her courage. So obviously, you sort of imbibe these things. And then I did it my way.
The President led the national response to the disastrous impact of the Asian tsunami of December 2004. She personally oversaw emergency relief operations, mobilized the armed forces for rescue efforts, and coordinated both domestic and international support for recovery and rehabilitation.
තුමිය මහ ඇමතිනිය වෙලා 94 අගමැතිනිය වෙන්න තරඟ කරද්දි හලාවතට එනවා. හලාවතට ආපු වෙලාවේ ඇත්තටම මම එතුමියව පිළිගන්නවා ඒ කියලා 1994 දී. ඉතින් ඒ ෆොටෝ එකක් මං ගාව තියෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ දෛවය කියන්නේ මහ පුදුම දෙයක්. අවුරුදු 20කට පස්සේ 2014 දී යහපාලනයේ පෙරලියට එතුමිය සමග නැවත මට එක මේසේ ඉඳලා සමීපව වැඩ කරන්න අවස්ථාවක් සජීවීව හම්බ වෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ මට මගේ ලෝකේ වීරයෙක් එක්ක මේ එකට වැඩ කරන්න අවස්ථාවක් හම්බ වෙන එක බොහොම දුර්ලභ අවස්ථාවක් දේශපාලනික වශයෙන් මම කියන්නේ.
CBK led the newly formed Office for National Unity and Reconciliation, or UNUR, promoting inter-ethnic dialogue and helping communities build mutual understanding. The program also supported people, especially in war-affected areas, to build sustainable livelihoods, recognizing that reconciliation must go hand in hand with economic empowerment.
குண்டுத்தாங்குள்ள தன்னுடைய கண்ணை இழந்தாலும் தமிழ் மக்கள் மீது இருந்த அந்த பற்றும் பாசமும் நீங்கவில்லை என்றதை நான் பிற்காலத்தில் அறிஞ்ச உங்களோட ஓனூர் தேசிய ஒருமைப்பாட்டு மற்றும் நல்லிணக்க அலுவலகத்தில் அவ இலங்கை ஊராக குறிப்பாக வடகிழக்கு முழுவதும் சென்று ஒரு கிராம சென்று மக்களை சந்தித்து அந்த மனக்குறைகளை மக்கள்கிட்ட கேட்டது எனக்கு நல்ல அனுபவம் இருக்குது. காணாமலாக்கப்பட்ட பிள்ளைகளுடைய தாய்மார்கிட்ட போய் அவர்களுடைய மனக்குறையெல்லாம் அமர்ந்திருந்து கேட்டவன் எனக்கு நல்ல நினைவிற்கு அவரோட நெருக்கமாக ஜனாதிபதி செயலகத்தில் நான் வேலை செய்யும் போது எனக்கு அந்த அனுபவம் இருக்குது.
In recent years, CBK has championed youth engagement and leadership, recognizing it as vital to Sri Lanka's democratic renewal.
ප්‍රබලම සංකේත තියෙන්නේ පාරිසරික දේවල් පවා අතර ලොකුවට එක වෛරයක් හිතේ නැති නිසා යාට පුළුවන් හැම කෙනෙක්ටම ආදරය කරන්න.
Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunu, she never cared about the credit and who got the credit for what she did. She brought in a bulk of reforms, but she never wanted to get her face published in the front page. I think for me she did a lot, but in silence.
I must also say that I do have regrets about my period in government. There are some things that I think we could have done better or differently, and then we would have had more success in what we were trying to, in that particular area, what we were trying to achieve. But then now it's too late to change anything, and I suppose everybody has regrets in their lives.
From her early years, Chandrika's approach to life was spirited, empathetic and bold. Her leadership was defined by intellectual independence and a refusal to be shaped by the fear and hostility of her times. She had the courage to speak the language of peace in an era of brutal war. She continues to inspire new imaginations, new expressions, and new conversations in the pursuit of equity and justice, and in the celebration of our common humanity.